Hello, it's Heather, and my first semester is done. All my grades are in, and I am ready to start back in January for clinicals, and really excited about that, really looking forward to it. But I thought I would do a video about my first semester and some of the things that I feel might be useful to someone else going into respiratory therapy. So I have some stuff written down here. I'm going to just talk a little bit about if you are interested in respiratory therapy or if you are already planning on starting. These are some of the things that I found in the first semester of getting through respiratory therapy school. One, I don't think that the material is particularly difficult. There's a lot of it, so you really do have to study, and you have to make sure that you understand how older material that you learn relates to newer material, and make sure that you're reviewing through the entire semester. You can't just learn this concept and then forget it. You're going to need it later on. And you may need that information to understand a concept in the future. So make sure that as you're going through, you are really reviewing everything and understanding the concepts, not just memorizing things to pass a test one time. It really is a matter of needing to understand information and be able to keep it in your brain and hold on to it longer than just passing a test. I find that for studying, it is more beneficial for me personally to study shorter amounts of time but more frequently, rather than like set aside a 4-hour block every other day and do nothing but study for 4 hours. That's not helpful for me. Maybe it is for some people, but my personal way of studying is to do, 15-30 minutes here, and then take a break and do something else for a while, and then another 15-30 minutes, and do smaller amounts of time but much more frequently than I would if I were doing really big blocks of time of studying. I feel like it helps me to recall the information more, and that recall is what really cements the information in your brain, is when you can just pull up a concept when you have the information, but you can't actually remember it. It doesn't do you any good to read a whole entire chapter of a book if you can't recall the information afterwards. So I do smaller snippets. That's why I do Quizlets and flashcards and things, because that enables me to just, with any 15-20 minutes that I have, to go through a bunch of flashcards or go through a Quizlet, and that recall is what really helps to cement the information for me. One thing that I didn't do until the end of the semester that I wish I had started at the beginning was starting a chart with all of the formulas that we learned. So I've done that now. I've gone through and tried to make sure that I have everything in there. I'm probably forgetting some things, but just simple things like mean arterial pressure and how to calculate FiO2 and just various things, various math formulas that you might need, dead space volume and all of that. So I have made myself a chart that I plan on adding to throughout the entire program. I'm sure that there are charts out there already that are pre-made, but for me it helps me to get the information into that sort of format myself. So I wish that I had started doing it at the beginning of the semester, but I didn't. I waited until the end because I didn't think of it. But that's something that I would recommend, is that way you have, if you need to know how to calculate this or that, you have your chart right there and you can look it up and see. Another thing that I would recommend is for your lab practicals to practice at home. Even if you don't have someone to practice with, just practice going over it out loud at home. If you're practicing ABG, or you're practicing introductions or hand washing or whatever it is, practice it at home, because those things need to become muscle memory. You need to be able to do them without thinking. So yes, it may be really simple to wash your hands, but there's a specific way that you're going to be taught to do it. So if you practice doing it every time you're washing your hands at home, then eventually you don't even have to think about it, so that when you go to your lab practical, you're not having to go, okay, what's my next step? Because it's not like it's difficult to do, but unless you have practiced it a few times, you may have to think about, wait, what is the next way I'm supposed to do this particular thing? Next, for studying, if you are not getting the results that you want on quizzes and tests, change what you're doing. If you're making study guides for yourself, but you're not getting the grades that you want to be getting, stop making study guides and try a different way. Make flashcards, make a Quizlet. And the reverse is true. If you're using Quizlet, but you're not getting the grades you want, maybe you need to look at doing something differently. It doesn't make sense to keep on studying in one particular way if it's not really helping you with the material. So for instance, I do flashcards and they really do help me. But I found that to do flashcards for everything that I needed for this class, it was just taking way too long. And so I had to, even though flashcards worked, the fact that it took me so long to make them meant that I had less time to actually study the information once the flashcards were done. So I ended up using Quizlet a lot and copying and pasting information from the PowerPoints from my class and typing out information and copying and pasting information from study guides. And that's how I did a lot of mine. So I have like 20 some odd, I don't know, close to 30 Quizlets that I've made. And that really did help me a lot. But it's one of those things where I had to weigh, are flashcards really being beneficial enough for me right now, or do I need to change something? And I decided that I needed to change something. So don't just keep plugging away with, your flashcards or your study guides or whatever if it's not getting the results that you want. And you need to be studying to understand the material, not just to pass the test. If you're studying just because you have a test coming up and you want to pass it and you're just cramming at the last minute, you're not going to remember that information when it comes time for the final, and then when it comes time for the next class, and then when it comes time to pass your board exams. So you really need to study to understand the information, not just to memorize things just enough to pass a test. That's really, really important in this kind of program because everything builds on itself. You really do have to make certain that you are truly comprehending the material and you're not just regurgitating it long enough to pass a test and then forgetting it. If you can avoid it at all, don't miss class. I did miss the 1 week and it really was quite difficult to get back on track and to get back to the point where I wanted to be with understanding the material. It made a really big difference to me to miss lecture and lab and not be there to get that information in person. So if you can avoid it, do not miss class. I think that's pretty much all of my tips about class and studying and everything. The next video I'm going to do is going to be on the stuff that I'm going to be using for clinicals. So my scrubs, my shoes, my stethoscope, all of that. So that's going to be the next time, but I hope everyone had a really good first semester. And if you haven't started the program yet, or if you're interested, I hope that some of these tips and information were helpful to you, and let me know if you have any questions. Bye.